Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to the stream. Hey, guys. Today we are talking game design. We're talking a little bit of a game theory as well. And I brought a friend today, Ratman. Say hello.
Hey, it's
Uh,
me, Ratman.
Ratman, can I haven't asked, man. I'm gonna ask right now. Why Ratman? What that doesn't seem like the most like complimentary of animal avatars that you could pick.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It was the first username I ever picked, so I'm just going to stick with it my whole life.
Sure.
But the origin of that was back in my RuneScape days. Before old school, new school, there was just plain old RuneScape. And there was these rats in the sewers, and I was scared of them. So I was imagining a like rat man person that was terrorizing people, but then I couldn't spell. So the terror of Terratman is misspelled, and that's it.
Awesome. Cool, cool. Yeah, so for everybody joining us, the idea for today, and I know that there'll be people trickling in, so I'll probably have to say this a couple of times, but the idea for today, I would really love to have a robust conversation about the game design, game theory of the multi-class changes. And, just like with most of my streams, this is not a copium stream. It is totally fine to criticize everybody. It's totally fine to criticize me, to disagree with me, to disagree with Ratman vehemently if you would like. We want to keep it um, we want to be polite if we can, but it's totally fine to say, no, you're totally wrong, Night Haro, and this is why. And some of what we'll be doing is saying, hey, I think this is totally wrong. I have no idea. In preparation for this, I reached out to Ratman. I was like, hey, would you want to come on stream? Would you want to come chat with me? We actually met we're in a DSR hard mode group together, and we just started chatting briefly after a run. And I found out that you also are working on a game that is TPD. I don't think you want to we're not releasing any news about that right now, but someone who has thought deeply about game design. Is that generally true, Ratman? Am I representing that correctly?
Yeah. No, I work in the game dev industry, or I've been trying to for a long time. But recently, about half a year ago, I founded my own video game studio. And myself and a bunch of other people, we are working to make our first game. Um, the industry was really rough for people, so the idea was we all come together. It's everyone's like first published project, so we're not established professionals, but we all care very deeply about games and game design and what games mean for people. And so I love talking about game design kind of all the time. It's just a fun, good exercise for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's how we kind of like it was just somehow game design came up and we were both talking passionately about it. And I think we both realized that, oh, okay, we might have some things in common with this person. Hey, Wampus. Hey, Robert. Welcome in. Welcome in. All right, guys. I see people coming in right now. We're having a conversation, guys. You're part of the conversation. So let us know if you have any questions. Throw it out there if you've got some ideas, thoughts about whatever. I think we'll just start it off and kick off. Um, Man, multi-classing. Now, whenever I talked to you about this, you said I haven't read up on a lot of this stuff. Is that still true for you?
A little bit. Part of me wants to let them cook before I form any like really strong opinions. Um, Personally, I'm a little skeptical, but I have been proven wrong before. So for me, it's just a bit too early. I don't want to read into it because if the information changes, then I've kind of just wasted time. So yeah, I'm sort of in like a middle ground, little limbo.
Sure, sure. And have you kept up with past ZOS specific development cycles and patch notes and stuff?
A little bit. Honestly, I kind of got into ESO in particular only about a year ago, a bit over a year ago.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I played what 6, 7 years ago or something like that, and then I just stopped playing, and then I got back in about a year ago. So I was not there for U35. I've only heard of U35. Um, but I sort of get the general cycle that they go on with like the PTS and then the numbered updates and whatnot. So
Cool. Awesome. Oh, yeah, I should mention, guys, as you can see on the screen, we've got some bunnies. And you can also see that we've got a donation meter. We're trying to raise money for a bunny cam. It's the number one requested thing here. I don't know how much it's ultimately going to cost. I put the number relatively high because I don't know what it's going to cost, but we're trying to raise money. So if you want to see the bunny cam, go over to Kofi and you can donate over there. Sorry, mini ad out of the way. I just want to mention that because people are probably wondering why their bunny is on the screen. But yeah, that's what's going on. Well, cool. I have some different perspectives on a lot of those things, as one might imagine, which I think is really good. I think one of the things you kind of pointed out, or maybe more alluded to there, and something I think is really important when probably in any probably just in life in general, but I think it's very important with game design is that just because there's one way to do a thing, don't imagine, even if you are the one who came up with the idea and you feel like it is the only way to do something, or it is by far the best way to do something. I would just strongly encourage anybody out there, don't trap yourself into the idea that there's only one way to do something. I feel like so often I see that, and it ends up with just a lack of imagination. We don't want, I mean, especially if you're talking about game design, you don't want a lack of imagination, right? Like that is so don't think that there's only one way to do various things. On the letting them cook, I love that. That's a very glass half full sort of perspective. I think some of us have been through enough of these ZOS development cycles. Typically, what they come out with the patch, the public PTS, and the first notes on that is usually pretty much what they've done, right? Because it's a year's worth of work sometimes, or many months worth of work, and they're going to tweak some things, but they're probably not going to rewrite a whole lot of stuff just because they wouldn't have time to begin with. But it's usually not really on the table from my perspective. But I love the sentiment. So I would start here and say my question to you, and I asked this, and I haven't commented at all, so that we're getting completely Ratman's thoughts here, and then I'll provide my own. Is whenever you think, and I'm not talking about what we've seen with ESO. I'm talking about from a completely abstract. I mean, you can base some of your knowledge of ESO and stuff like that, but I'm talking about this more in the abstract. We have a situation where there are 7 classes, and they don't need to be classes. You could say 7 bins, 7 generic groupings of something, right? And in this case, they
Yeah.
happen to be skill lines. Skill lines consist of, and there's 3 of them per class. So again, so in those kind of bins, you can think of these in very generic terms, everybody. And in each one of those skill lines, there are 2 types of skills. There are active skills, and then there are the passive abilities or skills or whatever you want to call them. And with update 46, what we've done, or what has been done, is that now they are open up so that effectively you can choose any combination of those skill lines up to you can pick 3. um, what are your first thoughts on doing something like that from a more uh, first principles perspective, not necessarily taking everything with ESO into account? Do you have any thoughts on that? I know it's a broad question.
Yeah. So my first thought is, you know, assuming I knew nothing about ESO, why have those categories in the first place? Right? If you're going to be breaking up the like abilities in this case into, these 3 groups per category, but now you can just pick, any group, like from any group kind of at will. The original categories don't really have any purpose. So that's sort of like my first thought on that. And like if you're stuck with one of them or something and you can swap 2 of them around, that just feels arbitrary. At that point you might as well just let people swap all 3 at all times. Um, as far as like ESO in specific goes, like since I do know a little bit of the context, um, it almost feels like a little bit of an insult as a change, because people have made up to 20 characters per account. I know people with 3 accounts with 20 characters per account, right? And they've sort of built these characters to be in their own little specialization. Whether that be for role playing, whether that be competitive trial builds, whatever. And just to say, like, all right, now you can kind of just be anybody with every tune you want, like that kind of hurts, I guess, for the sort of more experienced players because you've already spent all the time sort of getting to a place, and now it's like, oh, you can kind of go anywhere again.
Well, and I would say you can actually take it a step forward with that because anything that you were doing, while technically you can, in theory, still continue to do it, there's probably not going to be any reason to do it. And you're going to be doing something
Mhm.
that's suboptimal. So it's kind of like wiping the slate on what was before and reinventing the core, maybe not core mechanics, but all of the player efficacy, of their player options. It's like reinventing, wiping the slate clean, and saying, "Hey, all the options you had before are probably going to be bad, and now we're giving you an entirely new set of options."
Yep. Yeah, because taking history into account, you're right. This isn't a change like brand new game ESO 2. Look, you can multi-class. It's hey, all of your experienced and established characters. Surprise!
Yeah,
Enjoy
right,
or
right.
not. Maybe a lot of the not.
Wampus here says, deep in the back of my mind, I suspect this may be the ESO swan song of sorts, the beginning of the end. Hey, Realish. Hey, Wampus, everybody. Waslane says, Tabula Rasa. Okay. So what? So I actually just released a video on this, kind of talking about this, literally minutes before we went live. So I know you haven't seen it. I imagine most people haven't. But whenever you, how do you imagine the game? Let's kind of talk about game theory. So for those who aren't familiar with game theory, it is it's just trying to figure out like an optimized way to solve a game or ways of how a game kind of works out. The traditional thing is you might have, there's prisoner's dilemma and stuff like that, but I think you can take it, more steps forward on how things would work out. So if I am somebody who wants to, so typically players will want, actually, no, we can say that all players want to kind of min max, and what they want to min max could vary. So it could be that they want to min max the tankiness of the character, could be that they want to min max the DPS of the character, the healing of the character. Now, many of you are saying, no, 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 I'm not a, I am not, one of those players. I go for flavor. I go for the je ne sais quoi of my particular class or whatever. That's what I'm going for. Absolutely. What I would say you're optimizing for there is fun or maybe role playing or something. And I think that you can actually, to a large degree, you can quantify those things. You can put them into, I know that might sound crazy to a lot of people, but you can absolutely take those into account when you're looking at how a player will choose various options that you're giving them, because that's what's really happening as a game designer. What you're doing is you're designing a palette, a group of options, a menu, if you will, and you're giving it to the players, and you're saying, it's like I always use food analogies. You're a chef at a restaurant, and you're saying, I have prepared with great care these dishes, and you can do with them what you want. Here is the menu. Here you go, sort of thing. Does that seem reasonable? Are we kind of on the same page here? Do you have any disagreements there?
Yeah, no disagreements. That sort of makes sense. And I have a thought about game theory, but you finish first.
Oh no, go ahead. Throw it in there. Throw it in there. Or
Oh
or,
well,
or
you
actually,
were
let me
sort of
let me.
saying,
We got a couple of comments. Let me read those, and then before
yeah,
that way we won't have to stop your train of thought. So Robert Miller says, I really think they need to introduce a 10 to 15% debuff on the off-class skill lines. If the DPS on multi-class was brought down to the pure classes, I don't think people will end up feeling pressured. Um, Robert, we're gonna get there, man. That's exactly what we're kind of, not that specific thing, but we're getting to that topic more generally. And then Waslain says, tabula rasa is Latin phrase that translates to blank slate. Thank you, Waslain. I my Latin is entirely lacking. Hey, Luna says, I think the changes can be good and fun, but requires almost a total rebalance of the skill lines. I think Luna is also getting there as well, or already there rather, where we're headed. Okay, go ahead with the game theory. I'd love to hear more of what you had to say.
yeah. Well, so the way that game theory is taught in like university, for example, and I learned a bit of it during my time, um, is it's very much in theory. The second you hit real people and like real markets in like an economic sense or like real gamers in our sense, it kind of breaks. So we can think of like, oh, everyone wants to min max, or everyone wants to have the most fun. But the reality of it is that people, like the prisoner's dilemma is a really good sort of demonstration of that, right?
Yeah.
People generally will always try to save their own hides, anyways, et cetera, et cetera. So
No,
in
no.
the
I
concept
was going to
of
make the please make the point about the prisoner's dilemma. I mean, you can do it briefly, but um, because I was going to make, or here, I'll say this because I think it's important because I don't
yeah,
think
you
most
go for
people
it.
know. I think you're taking for granted a lot of your knowledge that I don't think a lot of people will. So, guys, for the prisoner's dilemma is basically like, hey, do I squeal? If I squeal, I get a better, deal than the other guy, and in the theory, both, everybody talks, right? But in practice, what we actually see in real life is people solve this all the time, where if neither person talks, that's actually the best situation. And so game theory and the reality of what happens in real life are two totally different things. It's kind of like, the saying that no battle plan survives contact with the enemy. There's theory and then what actually happens. All right, continue.
Yes. And I'm just thinking in the case of ESO, right? Um, Even before this multi-classing debate, right? If people want to go and try out rating, and this is an issue I think you're trying to solve by having like a very friendly open server as far as rating goes, but a lot of the available raids and a lot of the available raid leads are going to say like, no, I want my DPS on an Arcanist, right?
Right.
And it's like, well, before the Arcanist existed, we could clear with all these other classes, right? But it's just become like this nice like safety net to have like the optimal DPS, the optimal healers, the optimal tanks. There's a little bit of variation you can wiggle with, but generally what I found just with real people is the available raids tend to be kind of restricted. Now we're going to have all of these options with multi-classing.
Can
I have
can
a
I
strong feeling. Oh yeah.
Sorry, can I just jump in and say the reason why that is? The reason why it's so, and I'm not necessarily telling Ratman anything. For those who don't know, the reason why groups, even unexperienced groups, want you to be on the optimal or Pareto optimal in some situation, but like the most optimal because it's so easy to use thing is because DPS is absolutely king in ESO, and DPS allows you to clear content a lot easier. If you can just lock in the DPS, you can skip mechanics, you can do so many other things. And that, in and of itself, is a game design feature that does not have to be true. It is true for ESO in the current state, but it never had to be true. It was a choice that was made or unintentional consequence that then just happened along the way. But that is the current state of the game and the reason why the people I don't want to paint anybody who's like you got to be on the optimal thing or whatever. Not that anybody thinks we're doing this, but I don't want to paint them in a bad light because they're playing they're playing the game in the way that the game is telling you it wants to be played because doing more damage makes everything easier. If there were mechanics that did not have to do with DPS and the hardest part of doing group content was the mechanics, then we would optimize for something different, and that is not the case.
Yes. Yeah. And it's just my worry now with the multi-classing is it's just going to be exacerbated even more. Like you're going to see the available sort of open raids that are the most frequent ones be like, hey, no, we want the Necro DK Arcanist, right? It's like, oh no, we really don't like we don't have the wiggle room to have like you having that Nightblade skill line, right? And I think that's like that doesn't have to happen. Like there are very open raid leads. Like even myself, I'm doing like a hard mode like from scratch, like no knowledge. We're gonna pug this until we figure it out ourselves on whatever class you want to do type
That sounds
of
like
like
fun.
raid group. It is a lot of fun. Like and it's just you have to go in with a different mindset. The mindset isn't, oh, I want to get a clear. It's very much like, oh, I want to go figure this out. But I think like the state of like the average person just doesn't have time for that. I think I'm very privileged that I do have the time for that and have a group that has the time for that.
Sure.
Um, but I just feel like the average raid is going to be even more restricted, right? And then you're going to have the good skill lines or whatever. And I just think that's kind of harmful to the community that ESO has.
Yeah, and you know what? I hear when stuff like this comes up a lot of times, and I think it's from people that are very casual players, which is a totally valid perspective to come from, and they're not wrong in their thinking, right? But I might disagree with them, but it's a it's a rational and logical way of thinking about things. But people will think that, hey, it's like this, and then it kind of has to be like this. And the thing I want to strongly encourage is like, I don't always know how it could be different, but you got to keep your imagination open and you got to keep your mind open to the possibility that there is a different and better way. And I think that's crucially important in any kind of game design, is that because otherwise, again, you stop imagining and you stop thinking and you stop actually changing the way things are going. If I can, I'm going to catch up on some comments real quick. Kuzashi says, I think they should go for a system like Guild Wars 1, where you can take abilities from any class line and you have a limited pool of points that can apply to the class skill lines to buff them up. Hello, Crafty Pappy. Hello, Voss Boss. Luna says the fact that we have classes with skill trees tied to roles like Crow and Arc and other ones that are spread all across the skill lines is also an inconsistent design leading towards unbalance. Yes. And she further says, should be either one thing or the other. Kuzashi says, yeah, the same way class lines are laid are currently is so inconsistent. Certain skills have huge opportunity cost attached to them that requires them to either be OP or never get played. Kuzashi, I think you're dead on there. And then Robert Miller here says, agree with that. Luna, okay, cool. Just agreeing with Luna. And then they should have reworked the skill lines before introducing this to break up the lines. And then DPS is king, but if the players are not able to play that optimal build, they'll just get wrecked. Absolutely. Ishi, what's going on? Ishi says, sad truth is most PvE games. Sad truth in most PvE games. PvP even has more build freedom. Yeah, and then conceptually, there are breakpoints to DPS where if you have enough DPS, you can completely skip mechanics. Kuzashi, I absolutely agree, and that's one of the subtleties that maybe got passed over with some of the statements that I made. I would also say that that could also be something that was built in more, where DPS did matter to a point, and then there could be a large break point, and I think that they tend not to be that large, and tend to be. It is hard for players to even know what they are by just playing the game without looking at a spreadsheet or logs or what have you. And then everyone will be able to skip mechanics soon if PTS damage goes live. Wampus, thanks for the $10. Those rabbits look underfed. Wampus says, "Yeah, guys, we're trying to raise money for the bunny cam, so appreciate it." All right, let's. And I don't know if I skipped over anything you wanted to say, Radman. Is there anything else on this before we kind of? I want to move to some specifics here about the design.
Yeah, no, go for it.
Cool.
I'm a rambler, so if you don't move,
Okay.
I'm gonna stay
Okay.
here forever.
Excellent. All right. Cool. Well, I'll just keep moving on, and you just stop me if I'm passing over anything you want to go back to. So we have a situation where there are these 7 classes, and then each one has 3 skill lines. They have passives. Well, I'm a player, and I like playing games optimally. And so I'm going, and again, we talked about before, maybe not everybody was here, but we talked about how optimally I can optimize for fun. That's something I can do. Okay. It doesn't have to just be numbers. But for right now, we're going to mostly talk about numbers, and the fun stuff will kind of come in. So I want to optimize because I want to be good. I want, especially if I'm going into group content, or actually, even if it doesn't matter what I'm doing, I want to be good at the game, because being bad at the game sucks. It's not fun when you get killed by everything. It's not fun when you can't kill anything. So I want to be good at the game. So what 3 skill lines am I going to choose? Do you want to talk about this? I know exactly what I think, so I kind of want to hear what you have to say, Ratman, about this. What are players going to do? What's the obvious thing that players are going to do in that situation?
Yes, so I haven't. There's a lot of PTS changes on like all the class lines that I've seen but haven't like read into detail for. But assuming everything stayed the same as it is now, but multi-classing exists, the Arcanist beam would be on every DPS. The Templar like execute beam might also be on every DPS. And then one of the skill lines that just has the crazy passives that buffs all your damage by like 30%. That's what I would imagine. And I know the Arcanist beam has some like intended PTS changes, but even then it's so strong. The Templar beam is so strong, and some of those passives are so strong. So
Yeah. Well,
that's
and
what I think.
yeah, I guess it's so interesting. I think you're correct. Just generally speaking, I mean, things might change, but basically, yeah, it looks like right now as of right now, everybody's going to want the beam. And, I want to take a step. Well, I'll talk about it. So, my perspective is that players are going to grab the three best skill lines. Okay. Now, if I'm a DPS and I'm running group content, my job is to do more damage. I do not need skill lines that provide extra healing. I do not need skill lines that provide extra like survivability via like tanking. I just need DPS, and that's the way ESO works. You can totally do that, and so I'm going to grab the three that do the most damage. Well, as we've seen for 2 years now, almost 2 years, is that the Arcanist beam is ridiculous. It is 2.5 times as long casting as a heavy attack and does 50% of your damage on an Arcanist historically, and is just completely broken and has led to the situation where most groups just want a whole bunch of Arcanist DPS in the group. I will also say that even for casual players and for people that are, my wife, she wants to run around and pick flowers and maybe do a dungeon and maybe do a little bit of this or that. And you know what? She wants to play. It's frustrating for her because she wants to play her Warden because she likes the RP of that. But if she plays her Arcanist, she can also, you know, watch. Um, oh my gosh, what is the show that she watches? Um, I don't know. I'll come up with something. Sex in the City. I don't. That's not right. She's gonna give me a hard time for that. But yeah, so she can watch her, Netflix while also, you know, doing a random normal while also doing Maelstrom Arena and stuff like that. And so it just kind of makes sense to mostly play that one particular race or one particular class. And now we're in a situation where anybody can grab the beam. So what's going to happen? And when you compare that to all of the other, options in the game for spambles and what have you, yeah, there's some other things you can do, but most of them they're not gigantic, really long, really wide AoE abilities that will just melt anything and will do twice as much damage as any other skill in the game, and if not way more. And so yeah, it's a clear option. How would you, if you wanted to provide more options for players? So I think that we all kind of agree that rebalancing of all the skill lines is what probably needed to happen ideally before they did this. But I think that's what really needs to happen. Do you have any thoughts on what that would look like and what are some of the options?
Yeah, so it's hard to say, right? Because I think this hits a point you were saying earlier that there's no one good way to do things. If they wanted to bring multi-classing in, I think there's a dozen good ways they probably can. But as a general sort of central pillar, I can sort of share this fact on creativity, because I think this is where like build diversity comes from, is a little bit of creativity. Um, the way that creativity works, and this is again like some university theory garbage, so if you disagree, don't worry. But funnily enough, the more restrictions you give a person, the more creative they become. So if somebody says, "Hey, as a fun exercise, think of a business and start it," you're going to be spinning your wheels for like half a day just figuring out like what area of business has, you know, something you could do in. But if somebody says, "Hey, Night Harrow, I need you to make a business to help the oceans get cleaner," you know, already that's a huge restriction. I have eliminated 99.999% of all possible businesses, but now, like, it's just so much easier to come up with an idea. And I
All right.
think that sort of fact can apply into classing as well. So if they want to bring in multi-classing, I think there needs to be restrictions. And when those restrictions come in, they're going to be able, like, players are going to become creative and they're going to think of things and they're going to like have this emergent gameplay of multi-classing.
Interesting. How would you balance the various skill lines and classes, or would you?
That's the trick, right? Because yeah, if they just go for the free for all multi-classing, that what I've read is like currently the case, right? Like the reason why some of those classes have really strong passives is because some of their other abilities aren't as strong, right? So they're just going to have to make everything sort of this like gray equal. And to me, at least, that's kind of boring. Like the Nightblade having like really good crit, for example. That's really nice because it feels Nightbladey. Versus, the Arcanist who gets all the extra pen based on how many tome abilities they have. Like that's kind of like integral. But if they don't sort of just make everything sort of this equal middle ground, it's not going to achieve balance, and there will be a best. Just
Yeah.
there will be.
Yeah. Well,
But then having a gray middle is just boring. So
well, I would disagree with you slightly on the gray middle. I don't think it has to be that way. And I mean, I could point to some games for specifics on that. I think that, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I don't think it has to be that way. I think there could be a lot of options. So if you think about it as a player, you're going to grab the three best classes, and that's what you're going to play. So what you need is, well, first off, when we're talking about class identity and why class identity is dead now. And what I would say about that, I don't really personally care about class identity. I think that some of it is a little bit odd, anyways. Like take the Warden for example. Like they have animal skill line, they have a plant skill line, and they have Frost. And it's like one of these is not like the other. Why is Frost in there? Um, it doesn't it doesn't really make sense. So whatever. I'm sure there's some lore reason, or someone will yell at me in the comments about like there's a reason or something, but it doesn't, just passive glance, it doesn't make sense. And that's fine, but there are people that are playing and they've been playing a particular style and a gameplay that they desire. And the reason why that is no longer going to be, while you still could technically do it, you're going to be playing very suboptimally, and to the point where other people are going to be like, why are you still doing that? you know they wanted to play a particular way because that was fun, and the only way to keep that balance, so it used to be that there was more or less on certain classes there was a tank skill line, more or less there was a healing skill line, more or less there was a DPS skill line, and that's not always true. But now if you're telling me, well, I can pick any three skill lines, well, I'm going to go pick three DPS skill lines if that's what I want to do. And so you're going to increase your DPS considerably if you simply choose the multi-class. So there's really no reason to stay on a given class. So I think that what would really, needed to happen if they were going to go with this, you can do whatever you want sort of play style, is that you really have to balance all of the skill lines against one another. And they don't have. I disagree that I don't think they have to be this neutral gray. And I think that there are plenty of games that do this really well. But the more variables you introduce, the more difficult it becomes, obviously, to balance.
yeah, no, I agree. I guess I might have generalized when I said a gray middle, because I feel like the gray middle is the easiest way to go about that.
Yeah.
To actually do it like in an intelligent and kind of interesting way. I feel really bad for whoever got that job. Like, hey, guess what? Go rebalance every skill line. Updates next week. You
Well,
know,
I don't think anybody got that job, because I don't think any of
yeah,
that's been done. So that's good
it just didn't
news.
happen.
Let me catch up with
Yeah.
some of these comments. Ishii says lots of top players are voicing concerns with this patch. People got the new try in just 20 minutes, which is crazy. Average players will spike in damage, and scores will be everything. So instance clears will be easy. We'll see, Ishii. I think a lot of people will still struggle, and I think the more important DPS becomes, the more challenging it'll be for the average player. Wampa says so, with multi-classing, do sets like Zenkosh, EC, and Xenas become obsolete. Wampus, it's looking that way with a lot of stuff, but we really have to see what's going to shake out. Raid comps could be crazy right now, or there could be an easy winner. We'll have to see. Ishii says no, there will just be one buff person, as they are called. Yeah, okay, cool. Um, and then I think Luna says Wampus, not all of them, but currently we expect to not have Alkosh anymore, since most of the popular uh, combinations have like Herald of the Tomb, Assassination, Gravelord, and it means you're already way over pin cap. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And then Robert says think Zenkosh is going to die. EC though boost damage. There are also ways, Robert, to boost your critical damage, so we'll see on EC. Yeah, it's totally going to be down to what the group needs, and then yeah, a lot of different conversations about all the various buff sets. We won't go into that right now because it's not really um, in on topic. And then Kuzashi says the antithesis to more restrictions equal more creativity is that players often find the easiest means of doing things, even if it's not the most fun or is outright boring. Yeah, I think that can be true as well. Players have to be protected from themselves. So Kuzashi actually, this comment, players have to be protected from themselves. I'm wondering if you're a developer, Kuzashi, at this point. Um, Players don't. So I would say that players don't need to be protected from themselves at all. I have heard developers say this, and I think they're wrong. I think that the game needs to be designed in such a way that players want to do the fun thing. I think whenever you look at optimize content like we're talking optimize damage and everything, I think one of the variables that you throw in there is fun. And if something does close to and like player satisfaction, if it does close to the optimal thing or close to the amount of damage in this case as other options, but it's way more fun, players will still choose that, but it has to be within some degree, some margin of error. Do you have any thoughts on that, Ratman?
Yeah, actually, no. I was gonna say is like, if there is an optimal, that's fine. Like that's totally fine, right? Because
Right,
some people love min maxing. Like that's almost another enjoyment of games some people have.
right.
But it's how far off is everything else, right? Is everything else a mile away and it's just not feasible? Or is everything like, is there like a couple dozen good builds and good characters possible that you could have that are all pretty close? Like close enough that it doesn't matter? Like if you want to score push and min max, you go for the optimal. But if you just want to get your clear or even a hard mode clear, it's still very possible on the more fun builds,
Yeah,
right? And it just really depends like how big that spread is.
right.
Ideally, it's nice and wide, right? Because then people can do lots of different things. They can have fun and they can still hit good DPS, right?
Well, and to compare it to another game, that I really like and been playing a lot of is Helldivers. Helldivers had so it's a lot more simple of a game in a lot of ways. Not in all, but there's less options for players, but there's a lot of different loadouts that you can run. And what you'll see in the top tier gameplay when you're in content that most players in the game cannot do successfully, and we'll load in, it'll be we've loaded in with several people from the Discord, and we'll get Mr. Me and a handful of other people, Wicked and Weird. And if you look at our loadouts, sometimes they're the same, but oftentimes, even on the most difficult content where we know we're going in, we will all four of us have entirely different loadouts or mostly different loadouts. So our choices of essentially skills and abilities, their weapons and what have you, is completely different. And the thing is that it all works. And is there one thing that works better? Yeah, maybe, sure. But there's also that factor of like, hey, I want to take the the giant shotgun that reminds me of a bolter, that when I shoot something, it flies back and makes, that's what I want. So I took that gun. Okay. And that you can have the same thing. It doesn't have to be. So there are games that are balanced, and there are many viable and fun and different ways of playing. And I think what we see in Elder Scrolls Online is that the game is not designed in a way that there are multiple different, but still like you're not giving up anything. There's still optimal ways of playing that are all fun. It's just not the case. Sure, I like
Yep.
playing my Nightblade, but if I can only do that 130k to one target, and somebody with a beam can do that to everybody, all targets, I mean, they're multiple times as good as my build is, and that we're not talking percentages. We're talking like I mean, I guess we're talking about multiple times as good since they can hit 3 or 4 targets and do that much more damage than I can.
And easier, too.
And easier and way easier. Yeah, that's another thing is that typically what you would design for in a lot of games is like, hey, here's a way that kind of everybody can have access to this content and it can be fun for everybody. But if you want to do the hard stuff and do the big numbers, well, it's going to be more challenging. And it doesn't.
Hmm.
We've seen this time and time again, especially with those of us who really like to min max. I consider myself to be one of these people. We will do stuff, and I'm not the most extreme case, but we will do stuff that is crazy, crazy to get a little bit more damage, a little bit more, and we're happy to do it because it's fun. And for so long, you've seen with things like on a Nightblade where it's like, oh, my rotation, I have 11 button rotation, and it's incredibly complicated. And what I get for that 11 button rotation is I do 10% less damage than everybody else,
Yeah,
and that just feels
and
like a
it's a tragedy. Yeah.
yeah, that's a kick in the nuts. um, let me see. We got some comments here. So, Nino, guys, I want everybody to drop your comments, but I'm already realizing the problem that we're having, which is I'm not going to be able to read all of these. Nino the Witch says Zosh trying to remove Burn from the game is so stupid because it's their terrible trial and dungeon design that incentivizes people to burn the boss. Anyway, Nino, you are spot on there. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's completely correct. No disagreement from me. If the bosses had immunity mechanics like they do in Final Fantasy XIV, then people would be forced to actually interact with the mechanics instead of just burning them. Nino, I don't think that immunity is a good solution. I think immunity situations, I don't know what it's like in Final Fantasy XIV. I barely played, couldn't get over the tap targeting. But if like there are a lot of fights in ESO that there are immunity phases and they suck. It's not fun to just not be able to damage the boss and to just have to sit there and wait for, if you're actively having to do mechanics and stuff, that's different. And I think that's probably what you're talking about. But yeah, just to make sure that subtle difference there. Bridge skip is now possible on Teleria. Yep. Monkey, what's going on? Says it seems like Arcanist is required to be competitive in DPS. Do you feel the same? It's not required, Monkey, but it's just so much easier than everything else. That's kind of what we're talking about. Is that like it's just so much easier. Why would you play a Nightblade when you could do just as good and probably better, even if theoretically Nightblade might do more damage in practice because it's so much more difficult. It's like, oh, if I just came in an Arcanist, that would be so much more better. And then yeah, there's some conversation about FF14 and some of the issues with that, or people disagreeing outside of the scope, so we won't go into it. No good players in ESO do mechanics because they burn through them. Ishii says. I mean, Ishii's not. I mean, no good players. I don't really like the phrasing there, but there's a point there that is absolutely valid. Do I think 200K is going to be the new norm? 300K is what everybody's asking. Yeah, it's going to be a lot higher, guys. I don't know where the numbers. I don't know what their target is, so I don't know how much they're going to nerf or buff things. And some of these classes are getting ridiculously high numbers, like 50, nah, maybe like 20-30% more of their max theoretical. But now it's even easier to get that high, so it's going to be kind of crazy. And then Kakarat says, so I've been away for 3 weeks from the game, put in 2,600 hours in it, need a break. I left at the end of the last PvP event when it was only class skill lines. What's changed after that? Oh, God. I've got a couple of videos out, man. I did a live stream going over all the patch changes. Go check that out. It's hours long, but multi-classing is now a thing. Let me see here. What's up, B? I don't know about Ishii saying good players still have to do mechs and cap is 179K right now. Ishii saying in optimized groups. Okay. Yeah. All right. So there's a lot of balance is an illusion. What's up, Weremuggle? It's good to see you, man. Yeah, I don't know if we're going to be able to go through all these. I'll be spending the entire time reading through comments and not chatting with Ratman here, so we'll have to come back to him. So I want to talk about what I think should be done, and I'm hoping you'll disagree with me some, Ratman, so we can have a conversation about it. I think there's several ways of dealing with the situation they had. One was, first off, all the class skill lines should have been rebalanced. If you look at an Arcanist, which is the newest class, and it's done with the most singular focus on skill lines, there is a tanking skill line that is hard not to want on any tank because it is so good and does so many things all in one place. And then if you look at certain other classes, the tanking skill line, like on a Necro, is spread across all 3 skill lines. And so that means that for tanking, you almost don't want to take a Necro skill line at all we could go into that more because that's not entirely true, but there's a reason for that. So that's kind of awkward. There's also the situation again where you're never going to want to choose a base class anymore. I personally think that one of the ways, and there's probably several that they could have balanced it, is by balancing each individual class skill line against every other class skill line. Do you have any thoughts on how they should go about balancing moving forward?
Yeah, so I'm trying to find points to disagree with you again for the sake of conversation. I do agree a lot on that, right? Because like the Necro is a very common off tank right now because the Colo ult is really nice. The Scythe is a really nice heal. You have a lot of good passives for it. But yeah, you're right. They're kind of spread around. Um,
I would disagree
but
with you on Scythe, to be totally honest, but the rest of it, we're on the same page.
I'm not super experienced at tanking, so I could just
Sure,
be wrong
sure,
there.
sure, sure.
Um,
People say that,
but
so I'm just, yeah.
but yeah, my thought I guess there is if they do like move skills around, so they have like the tanking skill line, the healing skill line, and the DPS skill line per class, I feel like that's just going to make the problem of having like the perfect three even worse. So in my mind, I almost want them to do the opposite and like break things up more, like spread the skills into all different skill lines, so there isn't like a really perfect trifecta to have. Because if they do that, at least, it's hopefully going to reduce the issue of, having the ideal. But it might also just make people hate it more because, like, they've already had their beam and all that in one skill line. And if that got taken away, that would also suck. So,
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the problems too, is that they've had for the last 2 years, and I mean, I guess the game has been okay, but I don't think players are as satisfied as they could be with the fact that the beam, like being on a Narcaness with the beam, is the only way. It feels like the only reasonable way to go in most circumstances. I know that's not entirely true in certain niche situations, but for most players, that's just the been a fact of life for the past almost 2 years. And yeah, I think balancing each individual skill line against one another is one way to do it, because then my core class stays the same because those three skill lines are balanced against every other skill line. And so I could keep my class identity if I wanted to and maintain to be able to play my Warden, to be able to play my Nightblade exactly like I was before. And of course, that is not at all what has happened. So that's why playing one particular class is effectively dead for any kind of reasonable, even reasonably optimal kind of setup, which is what I think just about every player is going to want to do. I will also point out that there is a problem with a very a lack of any kind of intentionality and intentional changes. Like I tried to make I've long made Brittleton builds here on the channel, and I was like, well, how do we update the Brittleton? And I looked into it and I tried grabbing other ice skills from different skill lines, and there's no rhyme or reason to it, and so it just kind of doesn't work. And so there's also this situation where not only are individual classes completely being done away with, so are, ZOS talked about like some of their employees, they said, wanted to make like a fire and, poison themed or a fire themed thing or whatever. Maybe you can do one of those. But, they said their employees want to do this, and apparently well, I guess we already know that they don't understand how to play the game in any kind of optimal way. We've seen, I'm not giving anybody a hard time, guys. We've just seen ample evidence of this, where they don't understand the core mechanics of their own game. And not everybody at a company should. So that's also fine. But it's just really hard to even see. There's desirable play styles that people had that are also going to be gone, and they're not really improving upon it. And so they're basically just giving us something entirely different. And I think that it's really hard for a lot of people to take, because it's like that, to go back to the ordering off a menu at a restaurant, it's like I ordered one thing and you brought me out something totally different than what I ordered.
yeah.
Do you have any
Exactly.
do you have any thoughts on so like so I want to kind of disagree with myself here a little bit. Okay, so one way of doing it is balancing all the skill lines against each other. And then you could pick any three skill lines and it would be reasonable and you could keep class identity that way as well. That would have been one way to do it. Are there some other variations that you can think of that would be interesting or ways of doing things that could, I don't know, might make for more interesting gameplay or a style?
Like the answer to that question is yes. Can I think of it on the spot? Maybe not.
Sure.
If I could, honestly, Zos, I'm looking for work. Hello. No. Um, Jokes aside, like it'd be really tricky, right? Because we sort of explored two options already. One was like concentrating the skill line so that you have like tank,
Would you
healer,
hold on,
DPS
hold on.
on at each class.
I'm interrupting. Would you want to work at ZOS? I mean, I know, I mean, you got to get paid. You want to work in game development, but
Mhm.
would you want to? I couldn't handle it. I would,
Um,
I don't think, I don't know if you could pay me enough.
I wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
a lot of people, and actually maybe this is more of a criticism I have with the game industry as a whole. So this might be sort of a, it's not actually that common or not that uncommon of a perspective. But the way video game companies work these days is the really big studios have gone too corporate. Like I know people who work at some of the biggest studios in the world, and it's like, oh, we want to make this feature change. Let me go ask my manager, who will ask their manager, who will ask their manager. Um, I don't know about you. I consider video games art. When you have to ask your manager how to do art, you're not doing art anymore, right? And it's really hard to actually get things done in sort of a cool and interesting way. Um, and sort of like I don't know if this quote was like 100% or paraphrased, but when you said the employees, or Zoss said the employees wanted to sort of make this multi-classing change, my question would be which employees? Was it the like real high ups, or was it the people who've been sort of on the ground trying their best to do the dirty work the whole time? Right? If the answer is the people that are on the ground, that's really impressive because that's not what I see in big studios these days. But if it's the opposite, then it's just the problem in a spotlight.
Okay.
So I don't know if sort of, I guess it was a slight tangent, but
No, I
yeah,
think it was a good one. Zombie Jesus says ZOS is hiring. I was looking at finance jobs because that's what I work in, and they said they're only hiring developers. I will also say, don't mention my. Don't mention this
yeah,
stream. I don't think I've endeared myself to a lot of ZOS employees. That's the other thing I would say too, and I mentioned this before, is that I think some of the like the higher level decision making. I think we can look, and you can see this in any game. Do you ever see a feature in a game, guys, where you're just like, holy crap, this was so well done? Oh, this was so nice. Usually, when you see things like that, oftentimes there's one person who's like responsible for that thing, and they're just doing a kick ass job of doing that one thing. And it's not their fault that they made, they might make really great mechanics and then they get placed inside of a construct of overland or of a dungeon or whatever in a way that is not fun. And then there are also situations that are head scratchers where you're like, why, for example, we see this a lot in trials, like, why are there dungeon mechanics that don't make sense to be in a trial in the trial? And, those are head scratchers. And, but oftentimes I think that because there's a lot of junior developers and stuff like that, people just trying to get in the game industry and they just want to make great games. And it's not them. It's the machine. And usually it's the people with all of the power making decisions that are oftentimes not based on how to make the best game we can, but how do we make the most profitable game we can, because those are two different questions. So yeah. Um,
yes, yeah. Which slight shameless plug. There are studios that are actively doing the opposite. Game of the year last year, Baldur's Gate 3, Larian Studios is independently owned by like a husband and wife. It's like they're huge, but they're still doing it the like indie way, so to speak. Like this, yeah, slight aside, but that's something I'm very passionate about. I think at some point for Baldur's Gate 3, somebody went up to the CEO and said, I want every single scene to have like cinematic camera, like every dialogue to have cinematic camera. And the CEO said, Sure, let's do it. That costs them tons more money, but look at Baldur's Gate 3. If you've played, I think you know how like awesome of a game it is. And there's a lot of small indie studios, like mine, but mine's still secret, so it's not that much of a shameless plug. That are really just trying to do cool, fun things and like actually talk to the players and you know get their insights because your idea of a game is not the best idea of a game. The best idea of the game is what your players want. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, Zombie Jesus says we as gamers need to stop using the excuse upper management is bad, causing 100% of the problems. Sure, Zombie. I mean, I don't know if we, yeah, if that's what it feels like everybody's saying. My point was that there are a lot of, so there are people that are trying really hard to make the best game they possibly can at ZOS. I think that the ultimate product we get is very mixed, obviously. And so I don't want to be like all the developers at ZOS suck because that's not true. And there's people in there just trying their hardest to in the situation they're in to make the best game possible. And so I just want to make sure that we acknowledge those people. Um, the also the upper management is oftentimes are public facing and they are what I would consider public figures as well, especially in publicly traded companies, and so they're also fair game. If there's some random developer who doesn't want to be known, doesn't have a social media presence, and what have you, like I'm not trying to go out and be like, John so and so is terrible. I'm not trying to do that. If you're the CEO of a company or the lead, um, the game director or something else, I think you're fair game, just like I am for people. So, and then there's actually like legal terms and stuff in there too that means things at least in the U.S. So, yeah. Um, uh,
yeah.
well, yeah.
It's
So,
the public nature, I guess. Sorry, that's
oh
the
no, no, please,
last
please.
bit.
Well, and I see
It's the
this.
public nature of companies, yeah, that makes it really difficult because it's sort of like you said, the very upper management are public facing, but most specifically, they are shareholder facing, which means if the shareholders, which are just people, and a lot of times they're investment firms, um, think that what the decisions are being made at the top will not generate the most amount of money, they will remove the people at the top. So in the end, sort of the result of that is you get people at the top who make decisions to make the most amount of money, not the most amount of fun.
Right. And a lot of people, Luna says, this conversation feels like the last episode from the recent seventh season of Black Mirror. I haven't seen that season, but now or that episode, but now I want to go back and see it, Luna. What do you mean by that, Luna? That's very cryptic. Yeah, I think that the other thing is that what we've seen with Larian is that, and many other game studios like Arrowhead has done the same, and there are others, is that and they'll be able to get money. And this has happened before. This is how Blizzard got started, and this is honestly how ZOS got started, right? And Bethesda more generally. They had some people that were passionate about making fun games. They made some fun games and they were successful. And then they went on to do other stuff. Somewhere along the way, it stops being about making really good games. And slowly, what happens is that the things deteriorate. Like Ishii here is saying that like ZOS needs to drop the corporate junk and go back to the passionate ZOS of 2017. Ishii, I don't think that there are the people there to make that happen. I think a lot of those people left because if you're working, what happens is if you're working for a company and you're passionate about game design and making great games and you're not able to do that, and you're someone who's been successful and has been a part of other successful games, you go somewhere else. It is typically what you do. And not everybody can go create their game studio. A lot of people don't want to do that, but you still might be able to go work for some other company where you can do that. And so I think some of that is what happens. Well,
Yeah, I'm in agreement.
to talk more about like kind of because I really want to stick on the multi-class design here. So some other things that I could think of just on the spot, and this is some of the stuff that kind of kills me, guys, because I'm not trying to throw a lot of shade at people that are just doing their best to do their job. I'm really not. I do think that a company that sold for $5 billion, um, and then puts out stuff that it kind of sucks is 100% valid to be, to criticize them and to criticize the decisions that are being made. I think this is not a small indie game studio, and and these people have been doing this oftentimes for over a decade, for very long times. So I don't think I'm by no means kicking down, is I guess my point here, and I think that even when it comes to me, like I feel like valid criticism is always welcome, whether it's me or anybody else, it should be at least. And so whenever you look at ways of changing up the skill system that would work, as we mentioned, balancing every skill line against every other skill line. Well, what would that mean? That would mean that there's some sort of defensive, there's some sort of healing, there's probably some sort of sustain even, or that could be kind of more optional. But then there's also damaging abilities, right? Passive and active abilities in every skill line, and then it would be how you combine those that would be interesting. Could you do something? They don't need to all be plain Jane, vanilla, or gray, I think is the term you used. uh,
Yeah.
you know, in nature. Some could lean into a dot heavy style, some could lead into a pet heavy style, some could lead into
Mm.
some other type of style. And some of that could be fun. Some of them could be, oh, the cool feature of this skill line is there's a fun ability in there. A Nightblade's shade ability where you can like port around. It's fun. Um, we don't have enough of those features in ESO for me to point to a whole bunch of them, but adding in features that were like, oh, yeah, you grab this skill line because it's fun. I will also note the situation that tanks are in right now is currently you really only need two skill lines to do pretty much everything you want to do. And that is also an interesting situation to be in. So you can grab two skill lines, and then the third one is kind of like a bit of a choose your own adventure. Like, sure, is there a most optimal thing? Yes. But like and it's also weird because you're almost in this situation where you're like, do I need a third skill line? What should I even do with this? And there's a bit of analysis paralysis with that. That is interesting. That is a different situation. DPS and PvP and other skill lines are not in this situation. And you know what? Maybe some of PvP is, but I think there's a strong and valid concern of like tank meta coming back. I think that could absolutely be the case as someone who doesn't understand ESO PvP incredibly well, but does understand ESO game mechanics very well. I could very well see that becoming a thing. And similarly with healers, there's like 3 or 4 skill lines that are interesting, but then there's a lot that like aren't that great. And when you kind of look at it, you're like, well, I actually don't even have the bar space. So some of the coolest things for healers is the skills. And then you realize, well, I don't even have the bar space to grab the 3 best skill lines and put that stuff on my bar. I literally just couldn't do it. I don't have the room. And so that's kind of a different situation. But for DPS is just a complete I don't know how to say anything else besides clusterfuck. I don't know. It's a clusterfuck.
Yeah, no, I guess I get that, but I didn't think about it earlier, but I think your point about like the different modes of DPS, and maybe it could be the different modes of healing as well. Like, so you were saying like pets, like tons of pets versus, big AoEs everywhere versus like, maybe like single target focus, right? But I think the way they'd have to go about that is it would have to be like they would really need to be able to specialize. Like maybe the single target focus, those types of skills, if you really wanted to dig into that, would be like you would get way higher DPS, but you don't get AoE. Like there's no option. And if you're doing big AoEs, maybe, you can do pretty good DPS across the board. Um, but then like you're not going to hit the same highs as a pure single target. That's probably my biggest criticism right now is like, Arcanist, as we were saying, is like it is the best already and it's AoE, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then they
Maybe a
buffed it
Templar and
more.
Execute, but
Yeah. Yeah, and then the thing that they did to debuff it was make was had no effect and was never going to have an effect. Sorry,
yeah.
sorry.
But no. We're all in the same discussion. But I love that idea, right? So then my question would be, what would the pet style be? Like, how does that differentiate from an AOE style? Does it, do you have like these big CC and debuff DPS or buff debuff DPS, or would that be more in the healer role? Because right now, for example, it's like you have support DPS in a lot of groups, right? And the support DPS, their personal DPS is quite a bit lower usually than if you have like really solid, high parsers. But the idea is that there's that understanding that they're boosting everyone else to higher heights. You know, that to me is interesting, right? But I'd like more of that rather than just more of big number go higher for everybody, personally.
Yeah.
Like, because the whole point of trial content is you're coming together with 12 people. If 10 of those 12 or 8 of those 12 are identical, that's not interesting. But, if the sort of min-maxed strategy was to have like, 8 different builds in there and then maybe like 4 pure parsers, that to me would be a nice middle ground, right? Because you're at least having all those options on the table so you can play different styles. I think that might be kind of interesting based on what you were saying earlier.
Yeah, I think I'm very much on the same page, and I'll even take that a couple steps further. So basically, what we're talking about, guys, to take a step back from this, and again, I want to keep talking about the abstract. I want to talk about the game design, the game theory of it. Is basically what you have is like, well, you have things that the characters can optimize for, and in ways. So if a player optimize, so what Ratman is suggesting is like, well, and we kind of talked about this, but like, single target damage. If you go single target damage, that should do more than AoE damage. And so there's a choice to be made as far as what you optimize for. That's really cool. I think historically, what we've all wanted is, you know, if I can bring a class that buffs the group's DPS, and so the group overall is doing better, well, that's really fun. So, what if we put some features in a skill line that boosted everybody's DPS? And the thing is, there are a couple of these, but they've mostly been done away with in past years. And it was really frustrating because then you had to play that particular class, but now you can just grab the skill line. So if I can grab a skill line that will give me an ability that won't really do as much for my overall DPS, but will help my entire group, now I have a reason to grab that skill line. And if you add several of those things, you might end up in a situation where many of the people in a trial, maybe you could even have a situation where no one in the trial was running a pure single target or pure DPS build because it was always better to pick a particular skill line that would buff everybody's DPS because overall it's going to work out the best for all of us. And if everybody did that, that creates, or even many people did that, that creates a really interesting style of play. And it's like, hey, I can't do the most damage, but I can bring X class that will, or X skill line that will, give this particular buff to a group. I think that would be a really interesting style of play. Basically, what we see in ESO, I think the core problem is that whenever you look at the various skill lines, the thing that you can optimize for, there's no options. The only options are direct damage or damage over time or critical chance or penetration, or these are all just various pure DPS features, and there seems to be almost no. And I think the reason it's gotten there is because I think they lack these. I'm trying not to be insulting, guys. I always run into the situation where I don't know. I'm just trying to. I'm not trying to be insulting. That's all I'll say. They clearly lack the understanding though to do these things and to balance them well, or and I think this is worse, which is why I try not to say this. Or they're just so the person making the decisions, this is probably true, is just so incompetent that they don't realize the decisions they're making are bad. And so it's either they can't do the thing or they don't even know that the thing that they're doing is wrong. And I don't. I think that not knowing how to do the thing is less insulting. So I often assume that. But whatever, it's one of those two things. And so they don't understand that. So one of the things you could put in there is like single target versus multi-target DPS. You could also put in buffs for the group, and you could also put in buffs towards survivability towards the group. And now a healer or a tank has a reason to grab that skill as well. And so now you get more, and then you could also do something. What if we had an ability that everybody in the group could use that was just kind of fun? And did we need it? No, but it was pretty fun. What if you could drop a portal and everybody could use the portal easily, not like an Arcanist portal, and we could avoid mechanics with that. And it didn't provide us with a lot of DPS, and it didn't provide us with a lot of other stuff. There are a lot of groups who would say, hey, if we can kind of avoid but still have to deal with the mechanics for Teleria, for the walking around the outside, there are a lot of groups that would have someone grab that skill line, even if it didn't have much towards buffing DPS or survivability, they would still grab that. Do you see what I'm saying? Are you kind of with me on this, Ratman? I feel like
Yeah.
the problem is that there's not enough different kinds of things to optimize around.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the like in my mind, at least what you've been describing, what I've been describing is like the most interesting and fun solution. But to give the devs and the whole business team even a little credit, it is by far the most difficult and time-consuming solution to figure out. Um, and even if, the shareholders weren't like bearing over your shoulders, like it might just be too far. Like ESOs existed for too long for them to retcon so much to go and do these crazy fun things. Um,
I gotta say,
but yeah,
I mean, aren't they already doing that? Didn't they just totally wipe away all class identity and all and not all, but most build styles? Didn't they do that? Didn't they didn't even allow us like pet builds that everybody wanted, the zoo builds that everybody wanted are now like they took the fun out of them because there's no like fun optimal way to do that and make it viable. So, yeah.
yeah.
You,
Like I guess I was more saying like the abilities already exist, and it's like yes, they're getting debuffed or changed, but the abilities, I guess, at their core individually are kind of the same. Um, like they'd really have to like make something new. Like for example, you said the arc portal. Revamp the arc portal, change its behavior completely. It's still an arc portal, but make it new and interesting and like bring life into it. That's sort of more what I was thinking. Like with some of the abilities, like really breathe life into some. Like if we're gonna revamp, if we're gonna retcon, get rid of class identity, let's try something. Let's go for something cool. Let's really push the game to its limits a little bit. That's just not what they're doing though. So yeah.
yeah, I appreciate your perspective on giving them a break, and I'm probably too harsh. It's just it's hard for me when I can think of good ways of doing this stuff in a few minutes. To I think that most of the folks at the company are don't have time to sit and do this. I think that they're trying to do their job. They probably have concrete tasks and they're trying to do those tasks, and I don't think that they're able to brainstorm. And then I also don't think if they were able to brainstorm something, it's not like they have any hope or chance. Like maybe your boss listens to you, maybe he doesn't. Maybe they implement. It really has to come from the top. I just strongly believe, and this is a little bit more of an abstract thing, talking about game design in general. I don't know who it can be many people. It could be people in different. It probably should be several people, um, and they should probably have different jobs and be at different levels in your company. But there should be people at your company that are experts on your game. And I think the biggest thing, and not only should they be experts on your game, they should be listened to. And I don't think ZOS has that. I am sure there are people there that are experts on the game. Um, but although we've seen time and time again that they don't understand how their own game works, they don't understand how their own um, calculations for damage mitigation, and whatever even work. So it seems like there's a lack of people that even understand that they don't even know. And so they're trying to design things in the game when they don't even understand how the game works. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't think
No,
that's
I
ever going to
think
go well.
yeah, no, I think that's a beautiful idea. And honestly, I wish it existed in every game studio. Having people who are there, it's like, yes, you're doing your job developing, but then maybe you love the game you're making. Wouldn't that be wild? Um, and I think you're right. There are people who do love the games they're making, probably at ZOS, probably at most game studios around the world. Um, but there's something to be said about like your love being crushed by your job. It's like maybe you love video games, you want to try to make them, and you do them on your hobby time, you can come up with something really fun, really creative because it doesn't really matter. But then when your salary is attached to it, maybe you yourself don't even want to go and take risks because you got to get the job done. You got to keep going, meet the next objective. Um, Funnily enough, I saw a comment in the chat a while ago that said agile development killed creativity. Um, yeah, kind of. I think there's a cool middle ground you can hit. And it's funny from my perspective because like I work sort of as a project manager, so I'm the one running the agile, and I'm like, oop, got called out, but they're not wrong.
What
Um,
is agile
but yeah,
development? What does that even mean?
so I guess agile development is how most software is developed these days. It's pretty much instead of saying like from day one, this is the software exactly how it's going to be. Here's all the tasks, we already know them, and we just have to do them. That is traditional development. Agile development is pretty much you sort of go in cycles. So you have an idea, and your goal is to develop a product, and then you test the product. You get feature requests from your customers, your gamers, your whatever, your shareholders, and then you adapt and you keep going. And so it's called agile because you're sort of like on your toes. The requirements for the project keep changing. So like you get a good idea, you test it, all your players hate that feature, you get rid of it. You don't just keep it in there. um, that's sort of like the very quick Coles notes of sort of what agile development is. And a lot of game studios follow that. Like they go in, they make some minimum viable product. You may see, if you're interested in game dev, a lot of things are called like gray boxing. It's like you don't even have assets. You just have, a bunch of moving parts and you want to see how they all fit together.
We got to
But
explain
anyways, I'll
that.
digress on that.
So gray boxing, for those who don't know, is so let's say like you want to make Mario, and Bright, you just need something to represent Mario. You don't need the artwork for Mario, and so you can have just essentially a gray box that's jumping around. And yeah, we'll make him look pretty. We'll make him look cool. We'll even integrate the game mechanics into how the character looks. But when you're first starting out, a gray box is enough. And so that's what you find with a lot of different things.
Yes. And the sort of question you're trying to ask there is, if I don't have the art assets with these gray boxes, is my game fun? That's sort of what it comes down to. And if you can discover with no assets made, very minimum investment, my game is not fun.
What do you mean
You
by
can change it. And
assets? You're using the term
uh,
assets.
yeah, so that's like everything from like art to audio to just everything like tangible that you see. So we're using a gray box with no sound effects.
It's
That is technically like a placeholder asset. Um, but then you're going to get artists on. You'll have like audio designers come in. They will sort of make you assets to replace that, um, to make the game prettier, as you were saying. Like we want Mario. Someone's got to draw Mario. Someone's got to model Mario. Someone's got to animate Mario. But before all that, do you want to invest all that time in making that if Mario is not fun?
right,
Probably not. So you
right.
just use little gray boxes, no audio, and just see, hey, is
So
this fun? Is this interesting? And then you go from there.
cool. So it's all the creative things that you use that will really help you sell your game in the future.
Yes.
Cool. Sorry about this. I just want to make sure that this is that's part of my job is to be an audience stand-in. I might be familiar with some of this stuff, but I want to make sure that it's clear for everybody else. So I'm sorry to keep interrupting you.
No. This is good. Otherwise, I'm gonna ramble, and people are gonna think I'm kind of like stuck in my own head. So that's good.
um, I think you were making a point before I interrupted you, but I don't know if you still have it, or maybe you were
Uh,
finished.
I think I was talking about agile development and just like that I'm guilty of it because I think it does kill creativity if it's done wrong. If you take agile development to its core principles, which is like by the book what agile development should be, you hold meetings for exactly 15 minutes because that's what the book says you should do. You're just moving away from game design because I think video games, for me at least, are an art form. There's something that we should explore and challenge and try things with. um, and if you're stuck in the how are we making the video games versus just doing it, you kind of fall away from the core of it. And I think that's what we're seeing, with these updates in a lot of games, not just Sauce, but sort of across the board.
Yeah. Zombie Jesus here says, "Have you ever talked to the quote unquote heads of a company? I have, and a lot of people don't give upper management bad news, and they are very delicate to what they tell them. Then right after a meeting, yeah, with upper management, they say this sucks. It will be a bad decision. They never tell the upper management. Zombie Jesus. So the reason for that, I have quite a bit of um, business experience, and the reason for that is a lot of they don't want to hear bad. A lot of people in general don't want to hear bad news. Not individual people, but just people in general. They don't. And if you're the bearer of the bad news, you've heard the term "don't shoot the messenger." The reason that people say that is because people shoot the messenger, and so that is a lot of what happens. And when you're talking about, like, before ZOS was actually a publicly traded company, businesses have been, generally speaking, businesses are profit maximizing, but small businesses or those owned by individuals often can be quality of life maximizing. And so if your boss is the guy who owns and runs the company, he just wants to, typically, this is what happens. They just want to hear good news and they just want to hear that things are going well. They don't ever want to hear that their idea is stupid. That's certainly not that. They just want to hear good things. Some of the biggest factors that have caused I've seen to cause medium and large small, medium, and maybe smaller, like large businesses to actually make decisions is because the owner, that those that are owned by individuals or families, is because the owner or the family doesn't want to be embarrassed by something, and they will lose millions of dollars just so that they can, they don't, when they're at the yacht club, when they're at the country club with their friends, they want to be able to brag about their business and stuff like that. And so, and if their business is not doing well, or if they have to do something that would look bad in that situation, telling their friends about it, you can literally think of, like, if I were telling my other incredibly rich, successful friend about this thing, would it be embarrassing? And if the answer is yes, then they don't want to do that thing. That's literally how you can think about it. And so that's how some of these decisions get made. And if you have a boss that is not okay with you um, telling them any negativity, you have to do that as a boss, as a manager. You have to make sure that your people can come to you and say, hey, you're wrong, and that they feel comfortable doing that. And the way you do that is you reward them when they come to you and do that and they're correct. That is management's problem, though, man. That is not the employee's problem, because the employee is the upper management makes enough money that if they lost their job, they would be okay because they have assets and they have more money, and the lower level employee does not. And so it's not okay for them to lose their job, especially in the US. They're probably living paycheck to paycheck. Sorry, a little bit off topic, but something I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
Do
I
you
guess my final thought on this maybe is I see one comment here from Nino the Witch, which is like, if you focus on quality of life, you'll make more money than if you try to just make money. The problem is that's actually not true. But my follow up, so I guess data first. Like Genshin Impact, for example, it's a huge like gamble on your characters type game. They made in their heyday something like $250 million a month. Like, it's ridiculous the amount of money that games made to make money will make. But my follow up to that is, if you're making games to be fun, can you make enough money? Like, is it, do we need to make the most money? Or can you make enough money that you can pay all your employees, you have money for future projects, all those kinds of things? Like, the concept of enough is, I think, sort of the missing thing there. I just wanted to clarify because games that are made to make money do actually make more money. So just want to clarify that because that's kind of a misconception. But
Yeah, a lot of
you can definitely make enough.
yeah, I mean, that's why we get all the loot box mechanics and kind of the all that kind of the gotcha games and what have you. They do make more money. There's a reason why when you log into ESO, you get hit with an ad for more products you should buy from them. It doesn't add to the player experience. It does add to the bottom line. Um, I think that's also, when you talk, as I was talking about, like, businesses being quality of life maximizing, I think that's one of the good things going for indie companies is that, if you're Sven Vinka and you're wanting to make a game, right? It's the guy who owns Larian Studios. and you want to make a good game, at some point, like, he has enough money, right? Now what he wants, he's a gamer. He's a lot, in a lot of ways, just like us, and he wants to make a game that people are like, "Hey, you made that badass game. That's awesome. Like, you're gonna live forever in the, annals of nerddom, of gamer history." And I think that is one of the things that, not that that's why he's doing everything, but I don't think it hurts. And so I think that's one of the reasons why indie studios um, can produce such great products.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think everybody has a game that maybe it's because nostalgia, maybe, I really just think of Halo all the time. Like the original Halo games, like Halo Reach, Halo 2, Halo 3. Those games are forever in my memory. Like Halo Infinite or whatever the newest one is, like I only know that it exists because of how of like all the scandals and whatnot. Like I don't know anything about the game, right? And it's I feel like the indie studios are the studios or the big studios, back in their really early days, it's when they were just making the games. Those are the games you remember. Like I don't really want to remember all of the employee drama and like news drama. I want to remember good, cool games. Um, and I have a lot of upcoming studios that I, feel the same about, and they're sort of going back to just the art of making games again, and that's really nice to see. And it's just kind of sad that we don't see that everywhere.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to keep you too long, Ratman. I'm going to go till the hour here, but I want to give you an out. If
Happy to stay till the hour, or
Okay,
if you have like other things to discuss, that is also okay.
yeah. Zombie Jesus is saying, but are the developers telling the upper management about problems? Zombie, I would just say, man, again, just from my experience in business. So I've mentioned this before, but there's this repeated phrase, and it usually gets repackaged, right? But one way I've heard it in a rural area is that, like, the farmers, the field is fertilized by the footsteps of the farmer. Okay, sure, it's like some, kind of colloquial expression, but the idea is the same. The idea is that the farmer should the person who farms the field, right? And when you think about large commercial farms, they're not picking anything in the field. They're not even driving the tractor. Okay. And that's what I'm talking about. They have other people that do that. But the idea is that the person who's in charge of the business, no one should know your business better than you in an ideal situation. There are situations where hopefully for a time that could not be true and you do something about it. That's why many consultant companies exist and what have you. But if you want to make the best product and you want to make the most money as a company, other people shouldn't understand your product better than you do. I should not be able to tell ZOS. I should not be able to look at on paper and be like, yeah, these are bad decisions that they're making. We shouldn't be able to do that because ZOS should know better than us. And if you look at other games companies, you will find that they will do things that will you won't be able to do that. Is to a large extent. Maybe you have a good idea here and there, but a lot of times what they're cooking up is bigger and better and cooler than what you're thinking about. And I just don't think that it is the people in charge. It is their responsibility to create an environment where they're kept informed if they need to be, but they should also be 100% involved and know what's going on. And that is who's stopping them from doing that, right? Like money and time, but you have to decide that this is an important enough thing that you're going to you're going to take the time and you're going to spend the money. No, I'm with you, man. I'm
And
with
there's
you. I'm just disagreeing, Zombie.
Yeah, and they're certainly paid to be informed that well. Like if you look at CEO salaries at, EA, maybe Bethesda, Blizzard, that's more money than you or I are going to see. Especially the developers. The developers ain't getting that kind of money. So,
Yeah. Undead Shaggy says, hello, Game Studios has had a massive success with the turnaround of No Man's Sky after a rocky start. They continue to improve constantly, pushing out quality, free updates, and have their next title. Yeah, currently top 15 wish list on Steam right now. Yeah, that's a great point, Undead. The problem is Sauce doesn't know better than us, and they think they know better than us. Yeah, that is a problem. One of to talk a little bit to go a little bit away from ZOS because we don't want to. none of us want to sit here and bash them. There's plenty of things we could bash Sauce about, but I know none of us are actually interested in that. We might want to vent every once in a while. I certainly know I do. But one of the things that a lot of developers will say for feedback is like, tell me the thing you don't like. Don't tell me how to fix it, or don't tell me what I should do. Do you feel this? Is that something you've dealt with at all, Ratman? Have any feelings about that particular that
Yeah,
idea?
as far as like feedback goes in game dev, it's tricky because, as a game dev, if you love your game, right? Your game is like your child, and you don't really want, maybe like instinctively, people telling you like how you should parent your child or how you should improve your game in this analogy. But like realistically speaking, you are a person, and Night Harrow, having gamed his entire life, might have a really good idea that would fit my game so well that improves it to, beyond anything I could think of myself. Right? But it's really difficult to sort of like remove that ego of this is like my little creation, or like my team's creation, and sort of allow that kind of feedback. But I've been to sort of a talk at some video game conferences, and they've pretty much said like, get that feedback. That is data. Like the data has shown, like the companies that readily accept the not just like what is wrong, but how do you think we should fix it? Do better. Um, so
That's really
yeah,
interesting to hear. I can see that being the case. Yeah, I mean, if you have somebody, and I mean, it is wild to me that games companies don't understand or take advantage of this, but there are players in the player base of most games, certainly the case with Elder Scrolls Online, who have spent a ridiculous, an almost, and I'm one of them, an almost embarrassing amount of time on that particular game. And their depth of knowledge and their understanding of how the game works and stuff like that, if they're willing to give you that information for free, holy shit, why would you not take it? And one
yeah,
of my biggest frustrations with Zoz, and in particular, is that they don't listen to us. And then the other situation, albeit with a lot of games companies, is like, listen, if I'm writing a comment generally, and I don't know what the solution to this is, but if I'm writing a comment somewhere in the forums, um, I'm going to be honest. My opinion is worth a lot more than someone who has barely played, who barely understands games, and who's just coming in to yell at about something. My opinion is worth more. My time is also, to me, probably worth more than that person. And so I am not going to waste my time giving feedback when I know it's going to be drowned out by thousands of others. And I think that's one of the things that could be very helpful for games companies to realize and to try to how do we because not all feedback is going to be created equal, and there are people that will give better feedback than me. Why? Because you know what? I spend a great deal of my time making videos and doing other things that are not playing the game. And so I am fine with it being not me. I don't think I'm the best person for the job, but I just want it to be like, hey, take the feedback of the person who actually knows what the hell they're talking about, and not just like some rando. And don't just say, we don't know what to do, or a lot of times people don't. They don't have necessarily the most creative and out of the box like thinking ideas. And when you have somebody who is going to give you an idea like that, consider taking it and running with it.
yes, yeah. I think that last bit is really important too. Is sort of it's almost like an improv concept of yes and, right? You're going to get tons of suggestions from hundreds of players, maybe thousands or tens of thousands of players. How do you figure out which is the good suggestion, or the good suggestions multiple, right? Having a really skilled team that knows their game, but then can accept those kinds of ideas and then, you know, add to them, bring them into the vision. That's why having like game studios have directors. They're just like movie directors, really. They're saying like, okay, we're going to take these ideas. How does it fit into the lore? How does it fit into the existing systems? Can we do this? Would we need to, reshape the game to accept that idea? Um, but completely writing off the fans' ideas is just generally just no good. But also taking them verbatim is equally not good, because then you're just going to have a jumble of nonsense.
Yeah,
But if the
well,
team is there, they're reading, they can take them and build upon them and really make something cool.
yeah, well, and to me, like, if you have a good idea, like, okay, yeah, let's grab it. Let's also, like, can we improve upon that idea with more people? This is something really, and towards that end, having people that are different and that think differently and are into different things. So I don't want a game that is just built for me because why? Well, for me, I want my wife to play it. So I want a game that's built for her. So if you just listen to people that were like me, you wouldn't make a game that was good for my wife, and I want it to be both. And so I think having people with diverse interest and coming from different, backgrounds and what have you is really helpful for, like, oh, cool, well, this only services part of the community, and so that can also be a problem. There's a really interesting comment here. Nino the Witch says, I used to be in the class rep program. That's really cool. I had no idea. um, Nino, could you tell us in like a couple of words what the class rep program was and what it was like for, if that's not too much work? But I'll continue reading. They said, and basically every change I suggested was shot down, and every rework I pushed was denied. It was a massive waste of time, and all they did was talk down. Wow, talk down to them. Wow, yeah, that explains a lot and doesn't surprise me at all, Nino. And yeah, that's kind of unfortunate. Whenever we have these conversations, guys, I'm just going to tell you where I'm at, and I probably shouldn't, but I'll always err on the side of just being open and honest. When we have all these conversations, and like Sniper is talking about, they should fix the queue system for dungeons, and the wait times is a tedious, frustrating. Yeah, the queue system is just broke, as is the group finder menus are broke. Every feature that they introduce is bugged, and every old feature seems like it's bugged. And then they don't listen to us. And at some point, like, the game is good almost. It feels like so much despite itself, and so I'm still enjoying it. So I'm gonna keep playing as long as I'm having fun and everything. But there is so much stuff where you're just like, what is going on over there? That's why I made that frustration rant video where I was just like it just feels like gross incompetence. Where it's like, can we not put down anything that is polished or that actually works correctly? And can we not make any like large, big picture ideas that make sense? Um, Ratman, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm off base, man. Give me a different perspective here. Can you do that? Am I asking too much? I shouldn't ask this much of my
Well,
guess.
I guess if I'm really going to give the benefit of the doubt and game design, and let's say people have, or like the original developers had this great vision, not every game feature is meant to be explicitly implemented. Um, I have to absolutely agree with you with the bugginess of things. Like when I'm not one to download the PTS, but I like to read what people say about it. And the sheer bugginess of that PTS, from what I heard, like this most recent one, is a bit baffling to me. So like that's something I'm in agreement with you that it's just I don't think that should have been the case. But sort of the game being good despite of that, it might not be like I'm not saying like they intentionally designed bugs, that and then the community comes together to, have fun regardless of them. But like the game was designed with the community in mind, right? Like all of the content, the guild system, the guild traders, all of that kind of stuff. Like it's sort of meant for us to find enjoyment from without explicit systems. Like Zos didn't tell us how to run our discords. Zos didn't tell us how to, make ranks in our guilds. They just sort of allowed us to do it. Um, so like that's maybe my best disagreement I can go about that is like it's a community game. So like they've designed that. But on the side of bugginess, no, I have to agree with you. I just don't think that's really acceptable for
Yeah.
a company this big.
Yeah. And hopefully Microsoft feels that way. We got a couple of really good comments here. So, for first off, Archmage says, last patch made 0 cents. You don't drop an atomic bomb on the game to fix it with a with a scalpel. Genuine scale problem. Um, Zombie G says, Knight, you could probably go into your comments. What percentage of comments on your videos are helpful or valid? Um, Now take that percent and amplify by the number of videos for ESO sprinting uphill. Zombie, are you saying that it's hard to parse through the data? Is that your point? Because I would love to talk about this with my, I would love to give myself as an example. Just the other day, I got a great comment from somebody who was fairly rude. Um, I think they said like, "Why the fuck did you not say this?" Or something of that nature. And the thing they were pointing out is that a Nightblade using the other morph of Swallow Soul, what is it? I forget, funneling strike or something, or siphoning, I forget what it's called, um, is better. Their point was that it's better than radiating regen. And you know what? They're absolutely correct. And I went and looked and I was like, oh shit, they're right. It actually works just the same as radiating regen, which I don't love as a heal, but in certain situations, it is absolutely optimal. I have gotten comments about my audio being bad. I think that I can do something with most comments that I'm given, and they mean something to me. I can parse through it, and I think that not only do I think I can, I think that's my job. I think it's a big part of my job, and it's a big part of anybody's job who's getting feedback. And I am always grateful. I am grateful that person gave me that comment. I don't care if they were mean. My feelings are not hurt. Some people will, but you have somebody at a company who can deal with it and who won't take stuff personally, who can take that kind of feedback from the players, parse through it, and do something useful with it. When someone complains, even these like garbage, quote unquote garbage comments that people will drop in the forums that aren't on their face really useful. The game's too hard. Well, what are they telling you when they say the game's too hard? Because the game is not too hard to me. They're saying something, but you have to spend the time and the energy to parse through what they're saying. I just want to read what Nino is following up here with an answer for my question. I appreciate you taking the time, Nino. It was a program in which two players, so this is talking about the ZOS Creator program. It was a program in which two players from each class, one for PvE, one for PvP, who were community voted to be top players, got to work with ZOS on patch notes and class reworks. There's a big official ZOS Discord with us and the combat designers in it, and we got early patch notes and PTS changes that we would give feedback on. You must be okay. That's a different one. Yeah, so I was somewhat familiar with this program. It was a little bit before I was making really content for ESO, and it sounds like it was a good idea. The other thing you'll find is that there is a lot of times you'll get a lot of good feedback. Um, Anyways, never mind. I won't say that. They weren't listening to you guys though, and I think that we can clearly see that. And like, you just felt like it was a waste of time. I've had the similar experience in a little bit of interactions. Everybody I've talked to that has worked with ZOS has had that same experience where they felt like their time was wasted, and they gave them really thoughtful, and they spent a lot of time to give really good feedback, and then their advice wasn't listened to at all. And it does kind of just feel like forget you. It doesn't feel great. Have you
Yeah,
thought at
and I
all?
think
Good, Ratman.
oh, I think you were probably going to ask the same thing, but just like about the data collection of feedback, um, if every comment was created equal, it would be impossible, right? There's how many posts on the forums per day, right?
Yeah,
But this program that we were just talking about is a way to condense that into a manageable form for ZOS, right? The community sort of went up to, in this case, Nino the Witch. Nino the Witch funneled that to ZOS, and then they just didn't listen anyways.
right.
According to the comment, right? So it's not a data parsing issue. It's very much a acceptance of feedback issue in this case. Sorry, was that sort of what you were going to say as a
Oh yeah.
question,
Well,
or
I was gonna ask you like, what is your approach to feedback? I don't know if you've had to deal with this in the past, or so if it's or if it's just kind of a bit of a theory of what your approach to that kind of thing is.
yeah, I'm the type of person, and I'm very thankful, I guess I've had the opportunity to sort of learn to drop my ego on this. But I try my best to seek feedback all the time, to the point that when I first started dating, I was like, "Hey, this didn't work out. Can you tell me why?" Um, like it's a very interesting. I don't know why I do this, but in game design, right?
Hey,
Um,
Chrissy.
Seeking feedback is just so important. right? Because if your players have an issue with your game and you don't fix it, like let's say you're developing a game, you're not even at completion yet, they won't buy it. If you don't fix those issues, they will not buy your game. Um, in Zoss's case, people have already bought the game and they love the game and they want more of the game, but eventually the frustrations will overcome the love if you're not accepting that feedback.
Yep.
Um, and I think we saw that with U35. Like, I don't know the numbers, but the huge drop in the player base, like maybe they got more players since and they got more subscriptions since, maybe. But imagine if they also had everyone who stuck around. Um, and I think for me, at least, that's just so avoidable if you are really actively accepting feedback. As an anecdote, like we sort of mentioned, like I work in game design, I sort of run my studio. I'm almost at the point where we're sort of seeking feedback, and it's a little scary, because this is the first time we're putting our stuff out there. We are going to get some really nasty, mean comments. We're going to get some really nice, encouraging comments. But if we don't ask feedback, we're just going to fail straight up. Like, you have to go through both, you have to read through both. And then you, as the owner or the director or the developer of your project, take that and run with it.
It's interesting because I also deal with this exact same thing, being someone who creates stuff here on YouTube. And one of the hardest things for me to get, especially early on, was any kind of negative feedback, because the people I have to ask are my friends and family, and they don't want to tell me anything negative. And so it was so valuable when I would get negative feedback, because telling me what I'm doing is good is like kind of helpful, but it's also a little bit of like there's some bias there, and sure, I can lean into the stuff that people really like. That's really important to be able to do. But a lot of times it was a bit milk toast as far as the feedback I was getting, and so it wasn't. It wasn't hot or cold. Sorry, I'm using expressions. It wasn't like strong one way or the other, and so I didn't know what to do with it. And so getting strong feedback, even if it's quote unquote mean, it's like it was incredibly helpful. Nino here says I spent probably 4 or 5 hours a day reading through forum posts to make sure that other people agreed with my opinion, with what my opinion was and what I was telling them. Wow, this is heartbreaking, Nino. I am so sorry that this was your experience. Um, that this happened. That you would spend all that time and then give that feedback, and then you just weren't listened to at all. I think a lot of creators and people in their various programs have felt that same way, and it's yeah, that's heartbreaking. And then Archmage says it was never meant to be, but it'll suggest where attention is needed, so there's no excuse for finding valid or helpful ideas in the sea of feedbacks. Um, I'm not sure. I think that might have been part of another thought, and I'm not sure I totally follow Archmage. Sorry about that. Um, well, yeah, I don't know. This is a really, I will say, guys, just to kind of wrap this up, because we're gonna have to jump into a trial here in a second, which we're still streaming, so we'll keep the stream going. But I do want to say that I think that the multi-classing is really cool. Is a really cool idea, and I personally actually like it. I also feel, and I've tried to express some of the frustration that a lot of people that like their class, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me, but it is still, you don't want to alienate your customers. I don't want to alienate other people that play ESO, you know, and so that's been kind of frustrating overall. I do think that this is a really good thing. It's just a lot of questionable execution, a lot of questionable choices that kind of go along with it. So I want that to be understand, guys, that if we didn't like ESO, if we didn't care about it at all, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We wouldn't talk about it at all. And so, with everything, with all of our frustration and complaining about this stuff, the whole reason that we're doing it is because we do see the potential and we think the game could be better, and we want it. We just want there to be fun games. I think we all want people who work at those companies to be treated well, to have good quality of life, and everything else too. We're not trying to hate on anybody just generally at these companies, right? Most gamers, most game developers are gamers, and they got into it because they had a passion for it. They could have made a lot of money doing a lot more money doing other things. And so yeah, but we can hold both ideas at the same time. We can have frustration, we can have, et cetera, but we can also still be excited. So um, yeah, Ratman, I appreciate you taking the time to come and chat with me today, man. It was a good talk.
Yeah, no, I love talking about this kind of stuff. So thanks for having me on the stream. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and look forward to hearing about your game when it comes out. I'd love to have you on and talk about it. And I would love to hate on your game, man. I would love to tell
Oh,
you
I can't wait.
tell you everything I think is wrong with it. Yeah, but cool. Well, guys, we are going to we're gonna end the stream here in a second. I'll hop into the game and everything else. But I just want to say thank you to Ratman. Appreciate you coming in. All right, guys.
Yep. Have a good night, everyone.
All right, see you later, man. Cool, guys. Well, we're gonna jump over. We're going to be doing hard mode Lucent Citadel. I think that's what we're doing next. Let me get the game up here. We can chat a little bit more. We got a little bit of time here. I just want to say bye to Ratman and not just be like, deuce, peace out, dude. Zombie Jesus says, do you know about the 5995 rule feedback? It's usually given by the 5% of the user base that is upset. And the top 5% that are super happy, 90% of the user base is impartial and doesn't give feedback. Yeah, zombie, sure, man. Do we have like firm data that is true? Because I think that sometimes the 5% giving feedback that is negative is there's many other people that agree or disagree that just won't give any feedback. And I think there's a difference between there's a big difference between um, yeah, just because only some people are, a lot of people won't give feedback. That's what I was talking about. It's hard. It was hard for me to get feedback. Did people feel a certain way about what I was doing? I think absolutely. I think they did. But you know they didn't tell me, so how was I supposed to know? I don't know. I just think zombie. I'm sorry, man, but a lot of stuff you're saying is I think it's undervaluing the value of feedback, man. Personally, there's both sides, and yeah, not all feedback is good feedback too. Like I've had some folks who have some of my recent videos, right? I'll have fanboys of certain people or certain things, just fanboys in general, right? And they'll tell me that some people told me that the problems I was having, that other creators were not having those problems, with the implication that therefore I must be, I don't know, lying, making it up, incorrect. Why wasn't Hack the Minotaur and Zynode having the same problems that I was having? And so I must be wrong, and they've been on the PTS, and it's crazy because it's like, don't believe your lying eyes, right? Like I showed them in the video the problems I was having. Those people, I don't. Their feedback is not good or helpful or useful. That's not even feedback, really. I mean, they disagree. You know, it's helpful info to have. I now know the surprising number of people that are um, just a little bit detached from reality and are fanboys of a thing, and it doesn't matter what I have to say. That they're just going to fanboy on the thing they're going to fanboy on. That's useful information, but it's not really actionable. And so in that situation, I'm just like, all right, cool. Like, thanks for the info. And then that's it. I'm moving on from their feedback. Yeah, just that not all feedback is good and helpful. Yeah. Not all it is, but I mean, I still think you can learn something for most of it. Like even that guy who's like, and I mentioned that like Hack the Minotaur had hosted on his website fake parses, and then never said anything about it. And I assume that person worked for him. I don't know that, but if he paid somebody and who was doing like fake parses to make videos on that he's going to host on his website, I don't know. The whole thing's sketch, but he never came out and said anything about it, which is the proper like PR thing to do probably. But like, it just makes me never want to watch or listen. I just don't trust them, right? How do you know you can trust somebody? And so I don't. And I mentioned to that person like, hey, go watch a Zyno stream and see if he's talking about this stuff, But like, I can't do anything with that if they're not willing to believe their lying eyes. Robert Miller says, multi-class question. Do you think Arcanist is going to be the best tank base class, or is there another that we need multiple lines from? Robert, right now, I think that by far the Arcanist just has the best. Like, it's hard, man. Like, it's hard. They have so many good things in that skill line. It's hard not to like suggest it or want to take it. I think there's going to be other valid options, but I think it's going to be one that's really strong. I also think that for me, I'm less interested in what is the most like optimal in as far as like increasing group DPS by every little bit, even if it makes the tank's job a lot harder. And so I think there's going to be a little bit of um, difference there. Uh, if you choose the Arcanist, it's hard not to put a bunch of Arcanist skills on your bar. So I think you could go without it, but if you do choose the Arcanist, it's hard not to choose Cruxweaver armor. It's hard not to consider using Runic Sunder as your taunt. It's hard not to, so it's so on and so forth. It's hard not to use Rune of the Still Waters. I think if that's the right morph as your heal. It's hard not to use their shield. So I think if you do, you're going to end up with a bunch of Arcanist skills on your bar, and it will strongly flavor it. But I do think there are other options, and some of them aren't going to be as good, but they might be just as fun. They're going to everything works so well. All tanking classes are working really well. So there's other stuff that might be like not as good, but it could still work really well and still be very fun. So hopefully that kind of answers your questions. Nino says the main issue with ESO forums is that it's so heavily moderated that if people disagree with you, they just get the post closed for baiting. Yeah, Nino, and I mean they have constantly not been willing to accept or hear any kind of strongly negative feedback, man, for a long time. So yeah, absolutely, that's been the case for a long time. Guys, should I leave up the bunny picks going? We've had them going for a while. Maybe everybody will get tired of them. They'll have all seen them, so maybe we should do away with the bunny picks for now. What do you think? What the heck? Bunny thumbs up. Aeon says we can leave the bunnies up. That's just somebody that we found. Me with some sheep. It's around Easter. The main issue with the ESO. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. It's like 90% of my posts have been closed because other people just spamming nonsense. So Zoss closes it. Well, Nino. The other thing is, I don't think they have enough people that they can actually read all those forums, like and act upon them too. They don't have the team. And a lot of people will say like. It's always the we're just a it's like we're just a small indie company is kind of the vibe I get from them or whatever. But it's like, I mean, they just hire more people. Other companies that are smaller, um, like, will still do, yeah, still do the job. So I don't know. It's kind of wild to me. I'm wondering what's going on right now, guys, because we should have a grouping, and it's 3 till, and there's nobody in comms. I feel like I missed a memo on something. Let me see what's going on with this next group. I feel like nobody's in comms. I must have missed a memo on something. Is this not running this week? Is I got pinged earlier because they needed a fill. VLC hard mode. My clock is right. What is going on? Why is nobody in comms? What am I missing? Something's going on. Clearly, did we not fill? I don't know, guys. Clearly, no one's here, but I thought we had a run right now. I'll message the raid lead and see what's going on, and then I'll catch up on chat. Huh. I wonder what I missed. Cool. What do we got? Do you play on EU server at night? No, Sniper, I don't, man. I have a character, and I've thought about going over there many times, but I just never quite made it happen. I think he's like level 25 is my only character over there. Giving all the the moral support. Appreciate it. Definitely gonna make a healer with the Warden / Templar. Okay. My mic sounds robotic. Oh, I'm sorry. How about now? Thank you for that telling me. I'm sorry. If I tab out of ESO with ESO up now, it does that, and I'm sorry. I totally forgot. Yeah, thank you. Is it better now? I assume. I don't know what I was thinking, guys. I'm sorry. I forgot about that. I need to not tab out of ESO now. It freaks out since one of the updates. Yeah, thanks for that. Okay, cool. Did you get the memo for them or game invite? Yeah, no, I don't know what's going on. So we'll see if we get a message back from the raid lead, but I guess we don't have another trial happening right now. I guess we could talk about multi-classing though for a bit here, if you guys want to chat about that more in the situation. We could also probably hop over on the PTS. Looks like I got a message. I'm told it's happening right now. All right, hold on just a second. What up, man? I thought I had the time wrong or something.
You? Yeah, no, I'm just usually busy right up until the hour.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool, man. I was like, oh, dude, I'm at Audible for this stream. All right, cool. I'll be right back as I swap over the stream. All right, guys, we're gonna technically end this stream on YouTube, and it'll kick you over to the new stream if you want to watch the VLC hard mode happening. I'm Zenkoshing. I am on the trash can arsonist. Here is this character's name. Let me pull it up here. Oh no, you guys can't see that. Inventory? Can you see that? No, that doesn't have my name. Well, you'll have to take my word for it. I'm on the trash can arsonist. That's this guy's name. It's really fun. We changed it the other day, and we're going to be Zenkoshing and try to keep up with the group because I've only filled for these guys one other time. Let me do this. Let me kick you guys to an ad real quick, and then I'm gonna bio while I'm doing that, and you get more bunny pictures with full size, and we'll be right back, and we can chat more, and then we'll get into this VLC. All right, I'm back here. And let me fix the scene here. There we go. How many rabbits do we have? We only have 2 now, man. Some of these guys are not with us anymore. Like this adorable rabbit you just saw. Actually, both of these guys we no longer have with us. Spots there we have. He's the black and white one. And yeah, we've just unfortunately we've lost some along the way. What are their names? So there's Jordan. She had her name before we even got her. That's Gus. On the middle is Jordan, right is Gus, left is Neutrino. Neutrino is she was really fun. We don't have any of those 3 guys with us anymore. We got Spots here, and then you will see a little bit less of Maze. But what am I doing? I need to get this stream up. I'm going to kick you guys over on YouTube, and we'll be right back. You might have to hit refresh, guys, because sometimes it doesn't always kick you over really well.